Major funding for Telehell is provided by Dave's Archives. At Dave's Archives, he personally transfers, archives, and preserves classic commercials from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s and shares them with you. Don't forget about his Friday night live stream on, well, guess when? Go to davesarchives.com. By RetroCirc, the video store. New look, new attitude, new host. Catch them on YouTube because they didn't sell their souls for this. They just rewound the tape and made it sharper. RetroCirc, the video store. Press play. By Kier's Nostalgia Corner, a collection of commercial compilations, retro nostalgic things, and other random things that come to mind. Look for her on YouTube at KIERS Nostalgia Corner, and don't forget to check out her live streams early in the week. By Kev the Ripper on YouTube, home to some of the most obscure TV shows you may or may not have heard of, all with original commercials and all not seen since their original air dates. It's Kev the Ripper at KEVRIPZ. And by the very generous benefactors who grace us on our Patreon at patreon.com/telehellpodcast, including Rhonda Farrell, Rick Kalacki Jr., Chris Michaud, Meredith Morrissey, Rabbite, Matt Seelig, Spare Parts, and Neil Weinstein. Thank you. Throughout the entire history of television, there have been so-called ensemble shows that, even though there's a headlining star at the helm of it, allows for the supporting players who inhabit the show in question to develop followings of their own. All of which is done in the hopes that once the show they appear on ends, they can then use whatever goodwill they built up during that show so they can star in shows of their own.
Spin-off! Is there any word more thrilling to the human soul?
Well, yeah, most of the time, but that's not quite what we mean in this case. I'm speaking more about follow-up shows where the actor in question does something that's either the complete opposite of what they did before in an effort to show off their range, or on the flip side, somebody who makes a lateral move, stays within their comfort zone, but does something just different enough so that maybe they'll be remembered for more than just one character in their careers. Fear not, I'll give you a for instance. When Cheers ended in 1993, its cast of now-established stars went their separate ways, with 90% of them going on to do things that tried to get them out of the very shadows that they once inhibited, save for Kelsey Grammer, who would take the shadows with him for another decade and possibly counting.
You stole my mommy!
But otherwise, Woody Harrelson would do movies, John Ratzenberger would work for Pixar, Kirstie Alley would stay on the sitcom and Scientology circuit, Rhea Perlman and George Wendt were content doing guest star roles, Bebe Neuwirth would go back to Broadway with an occasional appearance on Frasier, Shelley Long is somebody that we mentioned in episode 64, and Ted Danson would get to show off the full range of his talents up and down the spectrum of showbiz, comedy, drama, TV, movies, and all points in between. Simply put, the cast wound up carving out their own identities without letting their otherwise signature parts define them for the rest of their lives. But what about those who have tried to escape the shadows of fame, only for those shadows to come chasing after them? Those who played a character so well and so expertly that no matter what they do for the rest of their careers, they will only be best known as that one entity for life. Forever unable to show off whatever range they may have and pigeonholed into a world of typecasting that there's seemingly no escape from, even though it's now your name in the title of your own series. In a case like this one, some things go beyond even an individual's own control.
Can Vic solve the mystery of the stolen cash?
The chameleon will find a way.
Or maybe he should just stick with finding out how he got his nickname.
Who's a chameleon?
Well, that's what you guys call me.
We do?
The Michael Richards Show, Tuesday at 9, only on the Comedy Channel.
And now.
Now he's sitting around in a chair by a window going,
Look, a giraffe!
look, a fist!
If only there were a horrible name that I could call you that would make you as angry as I am!
It's the Bonfire of Vanity projects.
I'm out there, Jerry, and I'm loving every minute of it.
In Telehell.
cliche as it may sound, I try to get out, but they keep pulling me back in. I'm not going to bore you with any further thoughts on Seinfeld, because Satan knows our episodes on the finale,
Episode 88,
and Jason Alexander's flop, Bob Patterson,
Episode 39.
do more than enough to cover the history of the show and its aftermath. But the Patterson show was just one piece of that aftermath, when Seinfeld ended with high ratings and a divisive ending that only took until very recently to resolve on another series altogether.
This is how we should have ended the finale. Oh my God, you're right. How did we not think of that?
Speculators were left wondering what would come next for practically everybody involved with the show. After all, how in the world does one manage to follow up one of the biggest and most successful TV series of all time? It was easy for Jerry Seinfeld to have a backup plan. He simply returned to stand-up, the occasional TV commercial, a popular Netflix show, and on some rare occasions, make movies of questionable viability.
Major news from the breakfast world. The Post Cereal Company has reportedly invented a shelf-stable fruit pastry breakfast product.
No.
Yeah.
Boy.
But considering how much money he made during the show's run, he really didn't have to do a damn thing. Neither did Jason Alexander, who, as we mentioned, in spite of the failure of Bob Patterson, found much better success on the stage and screen in supporting roles.
What a night! What a night! Oh my God! Miami Beach, Florida, the Association of Financial Professionals.
And neither did Julia Louis-Dreyfus, who, in spite of one well-meaning, slightly innovative flop in the early 2000s in the form of Watching Ellie, she spent the rest of the 2000s more than making up for lost time with the new adventures of old Christine, and especially Veep.
Tuck your shirt in. Okay? Your dick is hanging out of your pants.
Even the show's co-creator, Larry David, used its popularity to not only have a show of his own, but also prove that he could be as big a force on camera as he was behind the scenes.
It's a community shade. She doesn't own that shade.
Go fuck yourself, Larry.
Well, take a vote.
Go back to fucking jail, Larry.
Even other secondary and tertiary performers who didn't even share opening credit real estate with the core four Seinfeldians managed to find more steady work over the decades. Wayne Knight trading Newman the Postman for Officer Don on Third Rock from the Sun.
I thought we would skip dinner and drive straight to Lookout Point. That is, if you can stand the heat.
Patrick Warburton upgrading his putty to be Joe Swanson on Family Guy.
Oh, yeah! Death now!
And do we even have to mention what became of pro-dentite Tim Whatley after he moved to Albuquerque?
You're goddamn right.
But those are just examples off the top of our heads. Point is, the popularity of Seinfeld was so massive that even if you appeared in a one-time role in a single episode, that was more than enough to launch your career through the stratosphere. The show was that powerful to 99.999% of the people who inhabited it, which brings us to the 0.001% who, unfortunately, missed out on that power. Normally in this part of the show, we go to great lengths to give you a quick bio on the main player in this story. And while we still intend on doing some cliff notes, I feel that to give you something long-winded that discusses the life and times of Michael Richards would actually be a disservice to the man himself, especially because he recently published his memoir called Entrances and Exits. Not only do I strongly recommend reading the book wherever you can find it, but also grab a copy of the audiobook as well. If not to hear how an old familiar face is doing these days, then to hear straight from the source just how much of a life that he's led. And no, we're not being compensated by Permuted Press to plug this book. This comes straight from the heart that Entrances and Exits might just be the best showbiz memoir that I've read in a long time. And the other reason as to why I wanted this part to be short was because, as I was reading the book, I discovered just how tough a life he had growing up before striking it big in his adult years. And I want to keep this a somewhat happy place in spite of the flops that we review. But here's a shock. I digress.
He'll be all right. All he needs is a little rest.
No, he doesn't. His legs are crushed. We'll have to amputate.
The short version of Richard's life is that after a difficult childhood and adolescence, he devoted his life to the world of acting, which he pursued after a stint in the Army in the early 70s. After studying drama at various California colleges, Richard's first big break came in 1979 when he made a short appearance in a cable TV special being helmed by Billy Crystal.
Footage unavailable.
After a few more bit parts here and there, Richards wound up getting the attention of producers John Moffat and Bill Lee, who were looking for cast members to star in the first major competition against Saturday Night Live back when they still had their original cast. In the spring of 1980, Richards and 9 other up-and-coming comedy stars led the charge of Fridays on ABC.
Wait a minute, don't touch your dial. We're here for a few moments. We'd like to thank Mark Hamill, our special guest star, for being with us. Mark, thank you for being with us, babe. And Jimmy Buffett and the Coral Reaper Band. Thanks, Jimmy.
It was on Fridays where Richards developed several characters that, in one way, shape, form, or another, would ultimately add up to the character that he would be best known for. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. After Fridays ended in 1982, Richards would continue to refine his acting chops on TV, doing appearances on shows like Cheers, It's a Living, Night Court, and St. Elsewhere, among others. And here's a fact that made me do a double take. Richards actually auditioned for the role of Al Bundy on Married with Children. Wouldn't that have been a different show? The small parts, plus significantly larger ones in the movies UHF and Problem Child, would continue for Richards. But the true moment of revelation would happen in March of 1989, when Richards performed this comedy piece on The Tonight Show, being guest hosted by Jay Leno that evening.
Now, what's the trick here? Is there any secret to the rowing?
The grips, they're mine.
Oh, the grips are yours too. Okay. What's the secret? Just row?
Just row, breathe, and stay with it.
Okay. Well, let's see a demonstration here. Go ahead.
All right. Good.
Somebody who happened to be watching the show that night is certainly no stranger around here. One thing led to another, and that's how Michael Richards became Cosmo Kramer.
Kramer goes to a fantasy camp. His whole life is a fantasy camp.
I'm out. There was a half man, half pig in that room over there. Now, where is it?
Are you in? Well, are you kidding? You see those ladies I got showing? You think they're scared?
A performance that would earn him 3 Emmy Awards over 9 years, and a permanent cementation as one of the most memorable TV characters of all time. Which leads to a problem for Richards. How in the world does one possibly follow up a character like Kramer? After a year-long pause, Richards wanted to get back into the swing of things. But because he played Kramer so well, he wanted to do something that, at the very least, attempted to shake off as much of the Kramer residue that built up over time. Richards' memoir mentions that one of the post-Kramer projects he did was as the mischievous Micawber in a 2000 Hallmark production of Charles Dickens' David Copperfield.
Master Copperfield, if there is one great universal truth to be discovered as we journey through this vale of tears, it is this. Annual income, £20. Annual expenditure, £19. 19 and 6. Result, happiness.
Truth be told, go watch the 1999 BBC version with Bob Hoskins and a very young Harry Potter instead. Regardless, it wasn't quite enough for Richards to get Kramer out of his system. Fortunately, his agents booked an audition for him to play someone who had his fair share of quirks, while at the same time do something that was a little more serious than your average sitcom. Richards was tailor-made to play a San Francisco detective who developed a serious case of obsessive-compulsive disorder, but uses to manage the extremities of that disorder to solve various murders with the assistance of his healthcare aide. Unfortunately, Richards lost out on the role of playing Detective Adrian Monk to Tony Shalhoub. But to Richards' credit, he did concede in his memoir that Shalhoub may have been the better choice all along. At the same time, the notion of Richards playing a detective didn't quite leave his system, nor did the success of Seinfeld. So much so that when the idea of Richards returning to the sitcom world first came about, who else but the people who produced the Seinfeld series, Castle Rock Television, wanted to try and capture lightning in a bottle a second time, especially with the help of 3 writers who were there in the show's later seasons and signed on to be the creators and showrunners of this new enterprise along with Richards. There was the writing team of Greg Cavett and Andy Robin, who worked on the show during seasons 6 through 8 and won a Writers Guild Award for this episode.
I sent 16 of my own men to the latrines that night. They were just boys.
Frank, you were a boy too. And it was war. It was a crazy time for everyone.
And to round out the team, arguably one of the best-known writers of the series whose name was not Larry David.
Well, that episode, I mean, most of writing for Seinfeld was stories from my real life, and that's what I loved about doing it, because I don't know, I just don't feel like I'm that good of a writer, but on Seinfeld, Larry and Jerry said, look, we don't want you to write stories, we want you to come in and tell stories. Little things that may have happened at a party or something that went on.
Much more needs to be said about Spike Feresten. After all, his resume can stretch a mile long. After an initial stint as an NBC page, Feresten's first big break in the writer's room came when he joined the staff of SNL in the late 1980s. From there, he joined David Letterman's writing room during the last years of his NBC show and the first years of CBS. But while those were certainly ways to open the door wouldn't fly off the hinges until 1995 when, thanks to an episode of The Simpsons that he wrote, Feresten would soon join the writer's room of Seinfeld, where he would make this important contribution to pop culture.
You want bread?
Yes, please.
$3!
What?
No soup for you!
Feresten wrote the classic Soup Nazi episode, as well as an additional 8 shows. With the team assembled, now what was needed was an idea for this new show. As we mentioned a moment ago, Richards expressed some regrets missing out on playing Monk, but the notion of him playing a detective did not entirely escape him. In fact, it might have latched onto his system a little too tightly. The original idea for this new show was that Richards was to play a private eye, but he wanted to play one with an odd quirk, not unlike Monk. Unlike Monk, however, the twist had to be a little different, or, as Richards put in his memoirs, quote, "The script continues to have potential, but I still think it's bland, rather generic, and not freaky enough for my taste. It must have a weirder story, a touch of sci-fi, something otherworldly about my character, a self-determined freak who investigates situations in an unusual way," end quote. NBC already agreed to pick up just about anything that had a veteran of Seinfeld sight unseen. But as is the case in the TV business, networks still needed something to show advertisers in an effort to wring every last cent out of them. So in an effort to appease the network, Richards and his team take an unusual step in trying to flesh out a proof of concept for the show. Instead of doing a traditional sitcom pilot with 4 cameras, the team hired the services of movie director Michael Ritchie, partly because Richards was a fan of a movie that Ritchie directed years ago.
They call him Fletch.
Fletch! Fletch!
Fletch, F. Fletch. He's good at
Richards stating in his memoir, quote, "I want that look. And then we can cast the pilot and just shoot it. Since it's a work in progress, we'll also keep writing and modifying as we shoot. It's a way to get this thing on its feet to see what we're made of," end quote. Unfortunately, because the TV industry has more immediacy than the movies, NBC and the test audience who saw the filmed pilot didn't really care for it. So much so that, to this day, that version of the pilot has yet to see the light of day. And instead, they wanted a traditional sitcom, something that Richards really did not want to do, yet couldn't shake the urge to want to work again. So the pilot, armed only with a skeletal notion that it'd be about a quirky private eye solving crimes in a quirky way that's not unlike the character that made Richards famous, was set to be reshot in the traditional sitcom method. Now all that was needed was the cast members to keep this vanity project from getting too vain. Now, the premise of the show was that socially awkward but talented private detective Vic Nardoza gets the job done despite his unusual methods. Methods that would be on full display for McKay Investigative Services. The McKay in question being McKay. I said McKay. Oh, right, I almost forgot. Since I swore a few episodes ago to never review something that had a surname of a certain 70s TV family ever again, I installed a censor bleep to avoid even the mere mention of that surname. I hope that's not too big of a deal for y'all. Anyway, McKay will be played by legendary Knots Landing star and generally easygoing person to work with, William Devane. The agency in question would be rounded out by a newly hired rookie named Stacy, played by TV mainstay Amy Farrington. A grizzled muscle of the company with no last name named Jack, played by legendary character actor Bill Cobbs. And as an NBC insurance policy, the show even hired Tim Meadows, who had just left SNL at that time, to play the agency's photographer, Kevin.
I miss this place. I had a great time here. And I also would like to say that I'm one of the stars of the Michael Richards Show, premiering on NBC in 2 weeks.
With the pilot reshot under the recommendation from NBC that Richards' new character still had a bit of that old character left over, it seemed as though everybody would be happy with everything. If only it were that simple, as we find out just how much damage network interference can kill off a show with promise.
After the break.
This week on Telehell's premium content of The Damned.
Oh, sure thing. All right, I'll get it rolling on my side.
Yes, I was about to say, because you don't work in audio production for over 20 years without being like Mr. Worst Case Scenario. So,
oh yeah,
if you got to back up stuff going. Just like I said before, just email me the audio when everything is all said and done, and I'll pick and choose from the two. I got all sorts of tools that can clean up audio, but you're sounding loud and clear right now.
Good.
So I don't think we have to worry too much about sound quality. Now we just have to worry about sound quantity.
The only way to listen to Telehell's premium content of The Damned is by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Telehell podcast. For just a few bucks a month, you can listen to our premium content and get some swag along the way. Once again, that's patreon.com/Telehell podcast. And now, back to this week's torture.
October 24th.
In the year 2000.
A presidential campaign we mentioned all the way back in episode 26 was weeks away from upending traditional norms. Come On Over Baby by Christina Aguilera was at the top of the charts. And at 8 p.m., 7 p.m. Central, another late great character actor, guest star Michael Haggerty, practically says what we'll soon be thinking.
This is gonna be a big waste of time.
It's like the jokes write themselves, don't they? But go on.
Tell me, how does this work, right? Because the caterer needs a deposit by Tuesday.
Well, we got a contact we use, Mitch. He's young, handsome, power bait. We'll dangle him in front of her and see if she bites.
Well, what if he's not her type?
Oh, Mitch is everybody's type. Women are robots.
Okay, just because Lee Majors said it on that one episode of Family Guy doesn't mean that there's going to be any truth to that.
What? Women are things.
Regardless of that, we begin things under the assumption that we already know who these people are. And that's because this first episode of the show is actually not the pilot, because it never aired on American television, but it did air internationally. So before we dive into the series proper, and since we've also loosened the restrictions on international television rules, I'm going to pay a small amount of lip service to that pilot for just a moment so we can establish our characters. Starting with McKay interviewing Junior Detective Stacy.
Well, you look great on paper, Stacy. Degree in criminology, experience in corporate security.
Fluent in Japanese.
No kidding. Say nostril.
No, they wouldn't say that. It's a very repressed culture.
Our main character trying in vain not to act like his previous character.
Vic Ardoza, private investigator. Well, yeah, you got the name right, but the letters, they're supposed to look like they're carved out of wood and shot at.
And Bill Cobb's warning the new hire about Tim Meadows', shall we say, secret shame.
Stacy, Kevin's a pervert.
It's called voyeurism, Jack. It's a disease. Mine is extreme, but it's managed.
Don't worry, we are going to unpin that when the time comes, but I don't want to stray too far from the matter at hand. Now that we've gotten to know each other, we now resume our actual first aired episode already in progress. Act 1 begins with who I honestly feel is the best part of the entire series, Bill Cobb's using his curmudgeonly charm. Unfortunately, he's putting those charms to waste.
Up the hot plate on.
I'm making soup.
Someone's gonna put their arm on that. You know what kind of burn that is?
Now a pot is on it, okay?
That's a 3rd-degree burn. That's the worst kind of burn there is. That makes you the worst co-worker there is.
Way to kill that first minute, sir. Now then, McKay checks in on everybody's current assignments and...
Having any luck with the deadbeat dad?
Oh, I thought you said Debbie's dad.
And unpin that pin and hold it for a second. Forgive me for standing on a soapbox for a moment, but since when is it okay to make voyeuristic perversion a lovable character quirk? I mean, the last time I checked, pervs and voyeurs are not exactly a glorified way of life. I mean, it's one thing when you're being busted for being one on an episode of SVU or caught in a hidden camera sting on Dateline, but this is a comedy show. I don't care if this happens to be a side product of the guy's line of work, it's still creepy. Creepy is not funny. Weird is funny. Odd is funny. Strange can be funny. I just have a bad feeling about this. Just as I'm sure others did when they found out that Tim Meadows left SNL to do this show.
Stupid Tim Meadows. Why the hell would you leave SNL? You're a linchpin.
After more generic workplace comedy banter, the star of our show updates us on the state of the world at this time.
Yeah, 103 FM went Spanish. That's my 3rd preset wiped out by NAFTA.
Hey, don't go bad-mouthing Spanish radio. A lot of them have good shows. Like this one.
5-8 punk hits, los sensaciones de los lifetime. Los Dead Bones cone beat in my face. Chichi Rodriguez y los Baby Beaters cone staple my nose to the pig hoofs. Los Undertakers con los Populari act now. Gracias, Carlos. Take advantage, do los offer. And now back to la música de los Graham Parker.
Don't worry, the plot of the episode is in here somewhere. Let's just dig a little more.
You know what's so tough is the last time I saw him, we got into this big argument.
Yeah, what happened?
I don't know. I baked him herb bread, and he screamed at me.
That sounds like death grumpiness.
Death grumpiness?
Yeah, about a week before someone dies, they get very grumpy. That's how the mind copes with death. It's sort of like puberty, but instead of acne, you die.
Hi, deceased person here speaking. We don't really go through death grumpiness unless, of course, there's some sort of force majeure that comes along to instantly stop our lives at the drop of a hat. Anyway, episode plot, are you around here anywhere? Somewhere?
You know, the same thing happened with my grandfather. I brought him a really nice pair of moccasins from Flagstaff, He told me to go straight to hell. A week later, he was dead.
Profanity, that's the hallmark of the DGs.
Speaking on behalf of myself, who died a sudden death when getting an electric shock, I really only got to experience that grumpiness by simply exclaiming, "Son of a..." But that was it. Now, can we please get to the plot of the episode?
Damn this friggin' job. What the hell are you looking at?
I don't think this show understands how to get the story rolling. Looking at it online, this show runs 20 minutes or so without commercials, and we've already used 4 of them up. That's 20% of the show's runtime being used on things that are largely inconsequential. On any TV show, if you don't fully express the main story within the first minute, what's the point of waiting? Or even watching? Well, wait no longer as we see Richards try to recruit the services of a freelancer in an attempt to set up a sting operation.
What are you doing here, Nardoza?
I got another job for you.
Forget about it.
Oh, come on. You still in a tizzy about Mrs. Evans?
Yeah, I am.
Look, you did a good job. We got what we needed.
I didn't get what I needed.
All right, look, we've been through that. You know, we're not a dating service.
Had her top off, her skirt up, thought I had some privacy.
Mitch.
And then Vic breaks up the
All
party.
right, look, forget about that. You want more money?
It's not about the money, it's about the perks, man.
The perks.
I mean, if I'm not getting some action, then come on. I don't know what I'm doing this for, man. Joey?
I may be wrong here, but I think Kramer is trying to pimp out somebody.
I said turn pimp. I'm not a pimp.
But enough of the plot. Time once again for the Cobbs and Meadows Show. Because once again, I think the casting of Tim Meadows was at NBC's suggestion due to him recently leaving SNL at the top of his game, and a familiar face might do this new show some good, even though it was being tailor-made for a different familiar face in the first place.
Hey, Jack, you ever think about getting a physical?
You ever think about shut up?
Yeah, but Jack, at your age...
At my age, I should be able to eat my lunch in peace. Goodbye.
The Cobbs and Meadows Show, Tuesdays this fall on NBC.
On NBC, let's all be there.
And as we continue to sift through this show to find some semblance of a plot, we're also reminded that although this is meant to be a vanity project for one star, they try to push the notion that this is also an ensemble show using hackneyed office humor.
I sure have been collecting files.
I'd give you a hand, Stace, but I got a bad back. An old football injury. Someone threw a football at me. We met doing security for the Rolling Stones. Jack used to throw himself right into the crowds. That Jack. You know, he once saved 20 people in a Mexican train wreck. The man's a living legend.
Yeah, living.
Kevin, are you crying?
I'm gonna miss that mean old man.
This is called The Michael Richards Show, right? Would The Michael Richards Show care to give us any of the Michael Richards that it's advertising to us?
I'll tell you, I have no confidence in these candidates. And if I had a little time, I could train someone, but...
What happened to your gym teacher?
You're gone. With everything I struggled to teach him.
What are you gonna do now?
Well, no spring chicken, but like a well-seasoned chicken, I get better with age.
Wait, you're not thinking...
What, am I disgusting to you?
No.
Well, then we're agreed. I'm a very handsome man.
And with that, Richards goes from pimp to hoe as he makes himself the bait in an infidelity scheme, which starts at a local gym. Okay, so there might be a glimmer of hope here, so maybe Richards will get to recreate that workout guy that he did for Jay Leno, or...
100 reps? That's way too many.
100 sets. Yeah, I pyramided just like the poster shows.
Oh, geez. Man, that's 6,400 reps.
Boy, I wonder if I'm gonna be sore.
Ah, that's a shame.
We then move on to later that night, where a now body-aching Richards tries to put the moves on the person that he's trying to catch in the act.
So, like Herbie Hancock?
You're the worst I've ever seen.
And we just met. No, seriously, what do you think is the best religion?
Okay.
That's a shame. And by this point in the proceedings, we might as well call this guy Kramer version 2.0.
Oh, you're wearing revealing clothing.
You men, you can only think about one thing.
Oh, and what might that be?
The same thing I'm thinking about.
Well, you're going to have to be a little more specific.
Hot, steamy sex.
Thank you.
It's a shame.
Act 2 picks up the morning after, and the here with it, I'm just going to call him Kramer from this point forward because, let's face it, this is pretty much what the year 2000 viewing audiences wanted to see in the first place.
All right, Mr. Golgi, there's no real easy way to say this, so I'm just going to say it. Your fiancée, she didn't check out.
What are you talking about?
She was receptive to our contact's overtures.
So she's flirty. I mean, that's no crime.
No, it was a bit more than that.
What? Did she kiss him? Right. She kissed him, right? Big deal.
Look, it was more than a kiss.
She took her top off. She kissed him with her top off. Big deal.
Yeah, that's great. Meanwhile, on the Cobbs and Meadows show...
I know sometimes I come off wild, but I'm really just a fearful child. My dreadlocks and voyeurism are a shield. Today, love is the sword I wield.
What are you doing?
I'm sorry, I was just...
That was personal.
I'm sorry.
It's a real nice poem, Kevin.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's very funny.
I hope you do die, Jack.
The Cobbs and Meadows Show, Tuesdays on NBC.
On NBC, let's all be there.
And now back to what's supposed to be Michael Richards' show, where suddenly one plot dovetails into another, just like Seinfeld was able to do on a weekly basis. Except that was a natural flow when it happened there. Here...
Kevin, you know where Jack is?
Who cares?
I think I need some muscle. My client just threatened to kill me. Man, I wonder what Jack would do.
Probably fall asleep.
I just left Jack at the hospital. He's had a stroke.
Am I going to hell?
On a rocket sled.
Nice try, but flattery will get you nowhere. Turns out, however, Cobbs is okay after a simple ice cream headache, and the doctor, who bears a striking resemblance to the one that treated George Costanza's toxic glue-licking fiancé, has this diagnosis.
I finished my gelato, and my head began to hurt.
Luckily, your friend just had his first ice cream headache. Those aspirin should do the trick.
Thanks, Doc.
Yeah, thanks, Doc. Yeah.
Well, that was a waste of a potential callback. The least he could have done was this.
I would describe it as restrained jubilation.
Anyway, in spite of knowing each other for a while, Kramer is actually a little rusty when it comes to self-defense, as is Cobbs in teaching it. Ergo, a 15-second crash course.
Let's start with the basics.
Yeah, right, okay.
Now, in karate, you apply your strength against your opponents.
Right.
In judo, you use his strength against him. But in Tai Chi Chuan, you're not even there to begin with.
You heard that correctly. Kramer is about to take on his potential assailant, not with the kind of martial arts that could actually hurt somebody, but the kind that requires waking up at 6 in the morning, going to a nearby park, and essentially stretching out. Telehell is well aware that Tai Chi or Tai Chi Chuan is one of the martial arts, and that in some circumstances it can be used as hand-to-hand combat. The host is just being a tad facetious. So, just as Kramer is about to leave, he spots another familiar face in traction.
Mitch.
Look, man, some crazy mustachioed guy jumped me.
Did he break both your legs?
Yeah, and he yanked on my arms like he was trying to rip them off of my body, man. You gotta find out who did this,
right,
man.
Listen to me.
No, you gotta find out who did this and why they did it, man. This is out of the blue. I mean, everybody likes Mitch, man, everybody.
Yeah, well, Mitch, you have slept with over 300 betrothed women.
Yeah, start with them.
Yeah.
Yikes. And exactly how did that happen?
Well, we used Mitch for wife number 3.
Right.
That was pointless.
And now on to the final act of the Cobbs and Meadows Show.
Dear Kevin, my headache made me think. Have I let that junior coworker of mine know how I feel deep inside? Have I let him know he has brought joy or how proud I feel when he solves a case. And then I thought, he hasn't solved a case. He hasn't brought me joy. Why am I even writing him? Signed, Jack.
Damn, he's cool.
The Cobbs and Meadows Show. We have to do this gag in threes.
On NBC, let's all be there.
Now on to the other thrilling conclusion, where Michael Haggerty actually doesn't get his revenge because he doesn't show up again for the rest of this episode. The gym teacher finds out the rest of the story.
Misunderstanding.
All right, here's the thing. The guy that beat you up, his name is Arthur Golgi. And the reason that he beat you up, he had
Arthur Golgi. I should have known.
What, you slept with his fiancée too?
No, his kid's in my gym class. I like to chuck stuff at him. Kind of helps me get my aggressions out.
Well, there you go.
Wow, Mitch, thanks for coming in.
And if this were a fair and just world, that would have been a perfectly good place to place a punchline and fade to black. Instead, we get this.
Wait a minute, you said 2.
What?
You asked me if I slept with his fiancée, 2.
I did.
I got beat up because of you, man?
Hey.
I got beat up because you sealed the deal, man?
Hey.
Huh?
Not even here.
Come on, man. Let's do this. Come on.
Some would call that a comeuppance for all the bumbling that he did, but others would say not quite enough.
Nurse!
Well, look who we have here.
I got pushed out of a window.
Well, that's not good.
No.
Do you want me to kiss your boo-boos?
No.
You know, Roland, I've been thinking a lot about you.
Oh, no. Oh, wait, wow. Yeah, wait.
Oh, yes.
Whoa, no.
Don't you dare be coy with me.
Please. No.
Yikes. Well, good luck with all that.
As is the case with most shows that overhype and underperform, The Michael Richards Show did start off with a promising 13 million viewers tuning in, a number that deteriorated to slightly over 5 million viewers by the time the show got the axe in December of 2000. And suffice to say, the show received generally negative reviews from critics. Variety describing the premiere episode as thoroughly unfunny and that the humor is lacking at every turn in this series and the wit is practically non-existent. People magazine compared the difficulty in Seinfeld stars moving on to solo projects to stepping onto a toboggan loaded with tubes of nitroglycerine and then hurtling down a sheet of rock. While Entertainment Weekly wrote, "The Michael Richards Show isn't merely unamusing, it's shockingly incompetent." As if that wasn't bad enough, in a 2015 interview with the AV Club, William Devane had nothing but choice words for his experience on the show, saying, quote, "It was set up all wrong. Richards had a real warped sense of what it was. You've got a responsibility when you're the star or something like that. You've got a responsibility over all those people who work there. It wasn't fixable with those people. They needed Larry David, you know? Ultimately, the showrunner is the guy who gets it right every day before you shoot. The other guys write them and whatever. But ultimately, the showrunner is the guy who makes it work, and they didn't have a guy who could make it work." End quote. Which, considering all of this came from the minds of the people who worked on what is arguably the greatest TV show of all time, kinda makes you wonder, where did this disconnect come from? How can something with a high writer's pedigree, a stacked cast of acting veterans, and someone responsible for playing one of the most memorable characters in TV history not only fail to hit the target, but stick the landing overall? And perhaps more pressing, was this bomb really Michael Richards' fault, as William Devane just exclaimed? Well, before we get to the 9 circles, permit me, if you will, another excerpt from Entrances and Exits. And I'm quoting pages 357 through 360 if you want to do any vouching. All I ask is that you bear with me and that there be some reading music in the background. As I quote, "A poster comes out advertising the show. Meet a detective who doesn't have a clue as to what's funny anymore. I try to buck up. I'll work hard to be Vic. I'll probably throw in a little Kramer, more like imitating Kramer. I'm sorry, half in and half out of character. I'm me, or somebody named The Michael Richards Show, and Vic Nardoza is doing comedy imitating Kramer. I'm all mixed up. The reviews are murder. I'm roasted alive. I'm dismissed as unfunny. Thumbs down. Over and out. No, it's funny, Michael. Ignore the reviews, the writers tell me. It's funny. I do what I can with it. At run-throughs, there are a few laughs. It's just the writers laughing at their own writing. It's rather sad how they're bucking themselves up this way. I know it's not funny. I try to compensate by playing Kramer. It just doesn't fit with the normality of Vic Nardoza and Michael Richards combined. Going broad to get laughs with this combo is in bad taste. I've lost my head on a bridge to nowhere. By the 7th episode, the show is so crappy, the ratings so dismal, the critics so bloodthirsty, that I break down in a rage at a writers' meeting. Somebody is debating whether a countertop should be orange or gray. I'm dead here and you're discussing the color of tabletops. I'm shaking. I'm coming apart. But it's not funny. I'm not funny. I'm dead here. Everybody just stares at me. They know it's true. I just can't do one more crummy script. I think we're done here, Rick Ludwin says. I hope so. I hope the fuck so. Rick Ludwin is merciful enough to get me off the air. He saw that I was really coming apart physically and mentally. I feared that NBC would force me to keep making these crummy shows. As long as they had to pay, they might as well get some play. But they shut the show down after 8 episodes and pay me for the remaining 4. I suppose they sold enough advertising time to finally cut me loose, or maybe they feared that I was so bad it could hurt the rest of their lineup as well as Seinfeld in syndication. Pull the plug, get them off the air. I am relieved. I'm through with it all. I never want to do another TV show again. The last episode airs. I feel like I stepped out of the wreckage of a crash. I think I'm still alive. No, I'm dead. Gratefully dead. When I finally broke down at that writers' meeting, what they heard was a man screaming as if he fell from a great height. I'm sorry I was so loud about it. I prefer to fall quietly like the leaf from a tree, down to the ground, to the source of that tree in the first place. I'm simply reabsorbed into creation. From high to low, everything back down to where it was before. For the next few months, I try to recover from home at the bottom of my pool. I can hear that prominent actor saying, "It's just a fucking TV show." I'm trying to lessen its importance. I'm released from it all. I've got my gold watch. I was on the float, waving to all the people as I passed by. This time, I feel regret, humiliation, and failure. But also, most importantly, relief. Relief saves me from despair. I no longer have to be in the show. I can go home. End of the flop. We may now proceed.
Limbo, lust, gluttony, greed, wrath, heresy, violence, fraud, treachery.
First things first. We mentioned that there was a pilot that aired everywhere but the United States. However, there was also that filmed proof of concept pilot that the director of Fletch put together. To this day, a pilot that nobody has ever and probably will never see. So, by the seat of its pants, we gotta flag this show for Limbo. As for the series proper, there are some minor details worth noting, such as Tim Meadows' character's main characteristic being that he's essentially a peeping Tom who tries to use said peeping to his advantage on the job, only to be met with certain levels of scrutiny from his co-workers. Between that and, at least in this episode, all the advances being made by the straying fiancé, that's a layup for lust. Those who tuned in expecting to see Kramer version 2.0 were going to be disappointed with what they saw. For somebody who's trying to not be like the character he previously played, he seems to be playing that previously played character a lot here. The only difference between Kramer and Vic Nardoza is that one's hair is more well-groomed than the other. But otherwise, I'm seeing many edges to this sword. On the one hand, you have a guy that's played one of the greatest characters in TV history looking for an appropriate encore. On the other hand, that same guy wants to try and break away from that character even though it's not what the network wants, and they ultimately interfere with the creative process, tagging this one for treachery on NBC's end on account of them not leaving well enough alone and preventing this show from having its own identity. One that essentially trapped the star of our show into playing that same character again with some minor cosmetic changes. But deep down, those who saw felt that it was the same character again. Except he was an imposter. A fraud, if you will. With the added step of adding certain elements from the previous series in an effort to make it look like the previous series itself, or, as Mr. Devane said, the show needed Larry David to make it make sense, anything less than that would make this show look like heresy compared to the better show. As for whether Richards is actually to blame here, that's a gray area. On the one hand, it is his name on the title and with an executive producer credit. On the other hand, he may have listened to one too many notes from the network. But as his memoir clearly stated, he pretty much got himself into a situation that he really could not get out of until it became much too much for him to bear. And perhaps it might have been a little wiser for him to rest a little while longer on the laurels that he earned a decade earlier.
I've officially bottomed out. We need a new format. We should shut down and retool.
What about a guest host?
I'll pretend I didn't hear that.
The Michael Richards Show earns 5 out of 9 circles of Telehell. And thankfully, this incident turned out to be the most regrettable one of his career.
Bullshit!
Yep, the most regrettable incident of his career.
Bullshit!
Yep, the most regrettable incident of his career. Look, I'm not going to talk about that. I mean, Satan knows it's been talked about more than enough times. In fact, there's an entire chapter devoted to it in his memoirs. It was almost 2 decades ago. He said his apologies. Those who he antagonized forgave him eventually, and there's no need to bring it up ever again, if at all.
Okay, fine.
Since you're all masochists, we might as well talk about what happened to Michael Richards after this show ended. After a lengthy hiatus, Michael Richards would eventually try for a third comeback. On Kirstie Alley's short-lived sitcom on TV Land.
Thanks for coming up, Frank. This is difficult.
I know, kid. Remember, be direct and be compassionate. Don't drop the knife until his legs stop twitching.
It only lasted a year in 2013, but by that point, Richards decided he had enough of TV. And more power to him. After all, when you play someone as off the wall as Cosmo Kramer, how in the world could you possibly top that?
Hello, and welcome to Movie Phone. I can't eat, I can't sleep. All I can see is that giant red sun in the shape of a chicken. Jerry, my rods and cones are all screwed up.
See, the beauty of my book is, if you don't have a coffee table, it turns into a coffee table. Abadee, that's all, folks.
Next time on Telehell, we conclude the Bonfire of Vanity projects with the reminder that just because you can do most everything in show business doesn't mean that you should.
I eat no bad food. I don't smoke at all. Instead of smoking, I chew gum and I have candy drops. I'm going to get lockjaw and diabetes, but my heart is...
Until then.
If it's not in Telehell, it's not worth a damn.
Telehell was written, produced, edited, and narrated by me, Justin Hart. All clips used in this program are protected under the Fair Use Doctrine of the U.S. Copyright Act of 1976, and all clips used come courtesy of their respective companies and owners. Some of the music used in this program comes courtesy of YouTube and their audio library service. Telehell is a production of Horton Road and is distributed by Libsyn. We have reason to believe that the world may soon become an actual living hell in the next few months, if not few years from now. Fortunately, our social media feeds are as close as we're going to get to having heaven on earth. So please, if you have Facebook, Blue Sky, or, yes, even X, follow us at Telehell Podcast. Feel free to chip in to future episodes by giving us a couple coins at our Patreon, also at Telehell Podcast. Like, comment, rate, subscribe wherever you hear this show, particularly Apple, Pandora, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and even our YouTube page, all of which will be either at Telehell Podcast or at Telehell. One way or another, you'll get there. And of course, if you heard something that you didn't quite agree with us on, you're more than welcome to lay it into us at our complaint line, telehellpodcast@gmail.com.
'Cause when you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you. The whole world smiles with you.
Another great show from Mortimer.